There is a voice in your head that you know intimately. It is the voice of the tireless inner critic, the prosecutor who is always on duty, narrating your life and pointing out its flaws. It highlights every mistake, questions every motive, and compares your reality to a more perfect ideal. And you feel the weight of its judgment in your body, a familiar tightness in your chest, a knot in the stomach that clenches in response to the verdict. Always falling short, always in need of improvement, you are living in a state of civil war. On one side, there's the person you are striving to be, disciplined, patient, creative, and kind, the good you. On the other side is the person you fear you are, lazy, anxious, resentful, and afraid, the bad you. The entire project of your life can feel like a relentless campaign to enthrone the good self by eradicating the bad one. You believe that peace is a prize to be won, waiting for you on the other side of this internal battle. We are taught to admire this struggle. We call it self-improvement, discipline, or resilience. We see our flaws as enemies to be conquered, our negative emotions as traitors to be exiled. We approach our own psyche like a surgeon, hoping to cut away the diseased parts to save the whole. We believe, with an almost religious faith, that we can purify ourselves into a state of unwavering goodness, that we can finally, through enough effort, become a person who is only ever light, with no shadow at all. But you know the reality of this war, don't you? It is utterly exhausting. And what's more, it's unwinnable. Every part of yourself that you try to suppress seems to gain strength in the darkness. The more you force yourself to be positive, the more a cynical thought finds a way to sneak in. The more you demand discipline, the more ingenious your own procrastination becomes. You are both the tireless soldier and the unconquerable territory. You are the architect of your own prison and its sole weary occupant. For years, you have been fighting, believing that victory is the only path to peace. But what if the enemy is an illusion? What if the very act of fighting is the source of the conflict? What if the darkness you are trying to destroy is not the opposite of the light, but its inseparable partner? That last question, the idea that darkness and light might be inseparable partners, feels almost like a heresy. It goes against the very grain of our thinking. Our entire culture is a story of heroes and villains, of success and failure, of striving for the good by conquering the bad. To suggest that these opposites are not enemies feels like a surrender to the very flaws we are trying to escape. It is this exact surrender, however, that the philosopher Alan Watts identified as the gateway to sanity. He looked at our anxious inner world, at our exhausting civil wars, and saw a people fundamentally misunderstanding the nature of life itself. He wasn't a moralist who would give you a new strategy for how to win the war against yourself. He was more like a philosophical guide who would gently point out that the war itself was based on a profound, yet simple, illusion. He would ask you to consider something you cannot possibly deny. You cannot have a front without a back. You cannot conceive of up without a down. You cannot have a solid without a space. These are not two separate things locked in a cosmic battle. They are different, certainly, but they are utterly inseparable. They are two poles of a single reality. They arise together, they exist together, and they vanish together. They are, as Watts might say, playing a game of hide and seek with each other. Now, apply this inescapable logic to your own inner life. You want to be courageous. But what would courage even mean in a world without fear? You praise yourself for being generous. But how could you know generosity without the existence of this selfish impulse? You strive for discipline, but discipline is defined only in its struggle with the pull of ease and distraction. The things you call your weaknesses are not the enemies of your strengths. They are the other side of the same coin. You have been treating your own being as if it were a battlefield between two opposing armies, when in fact it is a single, unified landscape. The mountains only seem high because of the valleys. The valleys are only deep because of the mountains. To try and have a self that is only good, only strong, and only disciplined is as fundamentally absurd as trying to create a magnet that has only a north pole. You are not a battlefield. You are the whole magnet. The inner war you are fighting is not a noble struggle. It is a deep and exhausting misunderstanding of who you are. So, how do we live with this understanding? How do we function in a world where the enemy we've been trained to fight is actually our own other half? The first step is to see how this inner war is fueled by a game of simplistic labels. We have taken the infinite complexities of our own being and sorted them into two boxes, good and bad. In the good box, we place discipline, confidence, generosity, and joy. In the bad box, we place laziness, doubt, selfishness, and sorrow. Your life then becomes a moral accounting project, a constant effort to maximize the contents of the first box while hiding or destroying the contents of the second. Your self-critic is the tireless accountant in charge of this project, but Alan Watts would invite you to look closer, to see that these labels are just ideas, social conventions. The universe itself does not operate on this binary code. Consider a piano keyboard. You have decided that you want a life that is composed only of the white keys. They are the good notes, bright, happy, and agreeable. The black keys are the bad notes. They are dissonant, sad, and complicated. So you try to compose a life using only the white keys, and the result is, for a while, pleasant. But it is also simplistic, childish, and ultimately boring. It lacks depth, tension, and texture. The black keys, the ones you have been judging and avoiding, are what provide the richness, the soul, the blues. Your flaws, your sorrows, your doubts, these are the black keys of your being. And your inner critic is a musician who is terrified of half the keyboard dot. We also have a deep-seated misunderstanding of what growth is. We imagine it is a linear ascent, a kind of ladder we must climb out of the muck of our imperfections and into the clean air of spiritual perfection. Each difficulty, each failure, feels like we have slipped down a rung, a frustrating setback on our journey upward. But life does not grow in a straight line. Life oscillates, it moves in waves. A wave is composed of a crest and a trough, an up and a down. You cannot have a wave that is only crests. A wave that stops moving, that tries to hold its peak, ceases to be a wave. It dies. Your life is this wave. Your moments of success, clarity, and happiness are the crest. Your moments of failure, confusion, and sadness are the trough. You have been taught your whole life that the trough is a problem, a sign of failure, a deviation from the path of growth. But the trough is not an obstacle to the wave. It is an essential, non-negotiable part of the wave. The downward swing is what gathers the energy for the next upward rise. The difficulties you face are not tests you are failing. They are the other half of life's rhythm. To fight them, to condemn them, is to fight the very pulse of existence. It is to try and build a life where you only ever inhale, without ever exhaling. The result is not perfection. It is suffocation. This leads us to the heart of the matter, the wisdom of insecurity. The more you chase the positive, the more you live in terror of the negative. The more you struggle for security, the more you notice everything that is insecure. The more you cling to pleasure, the more you dread the inevitable arrival of pain. Your inner war is the frantic thrashing of a swimmer who doesn't trust the water. They struggle with all their might to keep their head above the surface, and in their tense, panicked effort, they sink. The master swimmer learns to relax. They learn to work with the water. They know that to be held up by the water, they must first trust it. They must allow for the downs as well as the ups. To find peace, you must stop thrashing. You must stop fighting the nature of your own mind and your own life. This means allowing for the existence of doubt, fear, and sadness, not as invaders to be repelled, but as natural currents in the water of your being. To trust that the system of life, which includes these negative states, is fundamentally intelligent and will not let you drown if you stop fighting it. The strength you seek is not the strength of the tense muscle, but the strength of the buoyant body that knows how to yield. Ultimately, this is a shift in perception. It is the difference between staring at a single thread in a tapestry and stepping back to see the whole design. Up close, you see a dark thread next to a light one, a rough texture next to a smooth one, and you judge them. You wish the whole tapestry were made of only the light, smooth threads. But when you step back, you see that the interplay between all the elements, the light and the dark, the rough and the smooth, the joy and the pain, is precisely what creates the breathtaking beauty of the whole pattern. You are not the good self that is at war with the bad self. You are the entire tapestry, the whole intricate and magnificent design. Your life is not a problem to be fixed. It is a work of art to be witnessed. The self-critic is simply the voice of someone standing too close to the canvas. The invitation is to step back and, for the first time, see the masterpiece for what it is. And so, you see that you were never broken. You were simply a masterpiece standing too close to the canvas, judging the individual brushstrokes of light and dark, unable to see the magnificent image they created together. The war you were fighting was against a phantom enemy, an enemy you created when you decided that you were supposed to be one half of yourself, and not the whole. This is the invitation to finally declare a truce. You have permission to stop the endless, exhausting project of self-improvement through self-rejection. You have permission to be the entire keyboard, the whole wave, the full breath. You are allowed to contain contradictions. You can be both afraid and courageous, both lazy and brilliant, both selfish and profoundly loving. These are not signs of your failure. These are signs of your humanity. These are the textures that make the tapestry of your life rich and real. Feel this peace treaty being signed within your own body. The knot in the chest, which was the tension of the two warring sides pulling you apart, can finally loosen. The voice of the inner critic, when you stop believing its premise that you are supposed to be one-sided, loses its authority. It may still chatter, but it is no longer the voice of a judge. It is simply the noise of an old, outdated habit. You can listen to it with a kind of gentle amusement, the way you would listen to a child who is afraid of the dark. Not knowing the dark is what allows the stars to be seen. This is not a call for resignation. This is not to say that you should give up on living well. On the contrary, it is only from this place of wholeness that true, intelligent change can begin. When you are no longer at war with your own fear, you can learn to act with it. When you are no longer shaming your own sadness, you can listen to its wisdom. When you accept all the parts of yourself, you can finally begin to work with your nature rather than against it. You stop trying to steer your life with a rigid and fearful hand, and you learn to dance with it instead. The peace you have been fighting for was never on the other side of the battle. It was here all along, in the territory you abandoned when you first decided that a part of you was the enemy. The freedom you seek is not in becoming a good person, but in the profound relief of becoming a whole one. And you already are. You were all along. This is the liberating secret hidden in the play of opposites. It is the understanding that the highest peaks of your life are inseparable from the lowest valleys. They create each other. And you finally become whole, not when you have successfully vanquished your flaws, but in the very moment you stop trying to be only good.